Hello, sisters and brothers. Our devotional for today, for May 30th, is a reflection on My Utmost for His Highest, a series of devotionals written and compiled by Oswald Chambers. You can always find the link to the daily devotional at utmost.org. And today's devotional looks at the cost of following Jesus and talks about those things that get in our way. When Jesus asks us to do something for that, we're going to look at the very end of Luke chapter 9. So I'll read verses 57 through 62. As they were walking along the road, a man said to him being Jesus, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." He said to another man, "Follow me." But he replied, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Still another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family." Jesus replied, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." And Chambers titles today's devotional, "Yes, but." Lord, I will follow you, but, from Luke 9:61. Suppose God tells you to do something that is an enormous test of your common sense, totally going against it. What will you do? Will you hold back? If you get into the habit of doing something physically, you will do it every time you are tested until you break the habit through sheer determination. And the same is true spiritually. Again and again, you will come right up to what Jesus wants, but every time you will turn back at the true point of testing until you are determined to abandon yourself to God in total surrender. Yet we tend to say, "Yes, but suppose I do obey God in this matter. What about..." Or we say, "Yes, I will obey God if what he asks of me doesn't go against my common sense, but don't ask me to take a step in the dark." Jesus Christ demands the same unrestrained, adventurous spirit in those who have placed their trust in him that the natural man exhibits. If a person is ever going to do anything worthwhile, there will be times when he must risk everything by his leap in the dark. In the spiritual realm, Jesus Christ demands that you risk everything you hold on to or believe through common sense and leap by faith into what he says. Once you obey, you will immediately find that what he says is as solidly consistent as common sense. By the test of common sense, Jesus Christ's statements may seem mad, but when you test them by the trial of faith, your findings will fill your spirit with the awesome fact that they are the very words of God. Trust completely in God, and when he brings you to a new opportunity of adventure, offering it to you, see that you take it. We act like pagans in a crisis. Only one out of an entire crowd is daring enough to invest his faith in the character of God. And how many times have we done that ourselves? Where we hear this voice, this call, this tug, this prompting from the Spirit, and we say, "Yes, but," and it doesn't seem like common sense. And that's where we get stuck in our heads and we get stuck in our thoughts, because we immediately begin to think of how we will explain it to someone. And very often those things, those steps and leaps of faith don't make sense to other people. And they're not going to make sense until you do them. There's so much of what we do in our faith journey that really only makes sense in hindsight. And even some of that, we still won't fully understand it. There's an excellent book written by Ravi Zacharias, who just recently passed away, but I highly recommend it. It's called The Grand Weaver. And in it, he looks back through the lens of his own life at some of the things that didn't really make sense at the time. But with the long view of faith and life, he was able to look back and say, I can kind of see what God is doing. Others have compared it to like the backside of a cross stitch, where if you were to look at the backside of a cross stitch, you'll see what looks like a mess. But if you turn it around the other way, you'll see that there's a pattern forming and that there's something taking shape. And we don't always get to see what is taking shape. And the last thing I want to say here is Chambers talks about the leap of faith and taking leaps in the dark. And I've commented about how I really believe they're steps of faith. So I guess what I would add to that is that the more that we walk with God and learn to submit our will to the will of God, we will find that these are just really bigger steps. They may feel like leaps, but I don't very often find it to be true that God takes you from nowhere and asks you to leap. But sometimes that first step can feel like a leap because you haven't been walking in that same humble obedience. But once you start, then you begin to see that God is calling you further and further out and uses that to advance the kingdom. So I hope this finds you encouraged. Thank you as always for listening. Be safe and stay well.